Welcome. My name is Dr. Robert Kittle, and we are going to be able to give a background into our coming webinar, Youth and Students for Peace program on June 15th, 2020. Our program is kind of co-sponsored by the Universal Peace Federation and the Youth and Students for Peace. The title, The Comprehensive Values Education Act, a Youth Perspective. This is part of a series that we have been conducting called Leaders Connect. This is our webinar series. We want to look at more clearly Senate Bill 1224. This was enacted by both the House of Representatives and the Senate of the Philippines. We are excited about this bill because it deals with the issue of character education, comprehensive education, values education, K through 12. It says it's an act institutionalizing comprehensive values education in the K-12 curriculum as a core subject, including good manners and right conduct, and for others. So let us give a little bit of background of what this Senate bill is talking about, and then mostly we want to give the perspective of Youth and Students for Peace, which will lay the groundwork for our coming dialogue in our webinar on June 15th. Section 1 says that the short title is called the Comprehensive Values Education Act. Section 2, called the Declaration of Principles. So we're looking at the fundamental root of this bill. The state recognizes the vital role of youth in nation building and promotes and protects their physical, moral, spiritual, intellectual, and social well-being. When we look at this Senate bill, we have taken exact terms from this bill, and I've listed several of them here. Of course, there are more. But I want to group them together and evaluate what, from our perspective, is the objective of these specific themes. The first three says we are looking for underlying principles of value education. It says we're looking for universally accepted proper modes of behavior. And the third one, the universal human, ethical, moral, spiritual, and/or religious values. So it wants us to incorporate religious values, but not be specific to one religion. Of course, here in the Philippines, we have many religions. Christianity is the dominant with Catholicism, but we also have Muslims, indigenous peoples, and also Confucianists. So, where do we get these underlying principles of our value? Where do we get these universally accepted norms and values? Not from one religion. Well, where do they come from? They actually come from our family. The family unit is where these underlying principles emerge. We will explain more about this as we go on. The second part talks about intercultural and again, inter-religious diversity. And then it talks about gender equality, a very important topic. What is gender equality? Well, gender equality means you kind of have to measure to the men and the women and make sure that they're equal. It's in that measuring and attempting to make them equal that actually becomes a problem, because who's going to measure? What standard are you going to use? And if they're not equal, then we will somehow feel justified to be prejudiced against or resentful. So, in our perspective, instead of gender equality, we use another term, gender humility. And this means that the man understands the value of the woman as more than himself, and vice versa. And this emerges again out of our family relationships. Parents don't want their children to be equal. They want their children to be better than them. And when you get married, you want your spouse to be better than you. And so rather than gender equality, we want to include that, not negate it, but actually build something even more important, is gender humility. Patriotism and nationalism is mentioned 3 times within this act. Again, where do you learn to be patriotic? It means you learn to sacrifice. That starts within the family, filial piety. A child that loves and honors their parents understands the value of sacrifice, understands that love is sacrifice. I love my parents, I'm willing to sacrifice for them. And when they grow up, well, they become patriots, whatever field they may be in, not just the military, but we need patriots in the business field, patriots in the educational field, patriots in the religious field. Everyone needs to be a patriot. In other words, willing to sacrifice for the well-being of the nation. Developing moral character and personal discipline and the obedience to law. Again, this is learned in the family. The obedience to law is called love. Children need parameters. They need guidelines. They need clear understanding of what is right and what is wrong. And the parents give that to them. That is an expression of love. Parents that don't love their children, just let them do whatever they want to do. You will spoil the child. So a child learns these parameters, these boundaries are an expression of love. So when they grow up, they become law-abiding, tax-paying citizens because they learned that in the family. And finally, to be a global citizen means to be really one global family, one world under God. Where do we learn all of these values that are taken from our Comprehensive Values Education Act? Very simply, they are learned in the family. So this, we believe, is really must be the focus of this educational initiative. And that is in alignment with the United Nations. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 16, number 3 says, the family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society, is entitled to protection by society and the state. So again, we go back into the issue of family. The fundamental principles that we're looking for, these universal principles, from our perspective, there are basically two. We call universal principles of peace. The first one is the dual purpose principle of mind and body. And this becomes the essence of goodness. The second principle is the pair system principle of man and woman, the essence of true love. And again, both of these are learned in the family. The essence of the dual purpose principle, where we have two purposes, the purpose of the mind and the purpose of the body. And they need to be in alignment where the mind dominates the body, the way our physical body is designed. So this means the mind is more public, interacting publicly, looking, seeing, sharing meals together, walking in the park and smelling the flowers. And that's the function of the area of the mind. The body is more private. So it means to fulfill this ideal, we need to learn to live for the sake of others. And well, where do we do that? Living for the sake of others. I have a question. Who is the first other that we would live for? Well, the answer is easy. That's our parents. And that's why the family becomes so important. We learn to live for the sake of someone else, not just myself, somebody else I value more than I do myself. That's learned in the family. When we love our parents, we call it filial piety. Again, it establishes the correct priority of mind over body, and we create good character in ourselves. This act of love, loving our parents, establishes within us good character. And even more, it becomes our conscience, our North Star. And if a child is confused or a teenager is confused as they're growing up, well, shall I smoke or shall I take drugs or shall I have sex? All they have to do is close their eyes and ask themselves a question. Will this make my parents happy? The mind becomes very clear. Wow, no, I shouldn't take drugs and smoke and have sex because I am a child of filial piety. I want to live for the sake of the happiness of my parents. The second principle, underlying fundamental principle of values and morals is the pair system principle. And in this, we need to honor marriage. The Comprehensive Values Education Act asks us, instructs us to be interreligious. Well, guess what? Every religion honors marriage. They have different ceremonies and different books, yes, but they all honor marriage. the declaration of a man and a woman being married or wedded together, bonded together to become parents of the children that they conceive together. Every religion, this is universal. And also, every religion warns about misusing love. They do it in two ways. Number one, they warn us we should not have relationships of love before we get married. Purity before marriage. Abstinence. Keep your purity. Don't have a sexual relationship until you are married. All religions. And when they warn us of this, they do so in the strongest language of kind of like life and death and heaven and hell. So it's, again, a universal interreligious dimension. Secondly, all religions say that we must be faithful after we are married. And since I'm sure the majority of the audience today will be from a Christian background, this really originates from Moses' 10 Commandments. Do not commit adultery. And do not covet your neighbor's wife. So don't have this act and really try to even clean your mind. I think one of the most important parts of this bill is Section 9. It talks about the parent-teacher cooperation, but it emphasizes the role of parents. In recognition of the natural and primary right and duty of parents in the rearing of the young for the development of moral character. It defines what parents must do. They have the natural right, the primary duty to inculcate moral character in their children. That's really important. When we look at the Senate Bill 1224, there are certain words that are missing, and we want to supplement or work to make that correction. Family is not there in that bill. Filial piety is not there. Marriage is not there. Fidelity within marriage. Sexuality, sexual, those words are not there. Abstinence and purity, responsibility, sacrifice. So they are there, but we have to bring them out more clearly, because if we are going to educate our young people about moral values, universal moral values, about good manners and right conduct, about comprehensive moral values, then we have to educate them in these areas. It's essential. The development of moral character in young people, says Bill 1224, is the natural and primary right and duty of parents. Well, using what we call a backward design framework, we can find the starting point. Where do we begin with this comprehensive values education? What is the starting point? What is the long-term goal? Well, this backward design program, it actually is an English idiom. They say begin with the end in mind. And what does that mean? Let's take an example. You want to build a house. Where do you begin? Well, the first thing you do is you design the house. You want to have a complete design so that you know where everything is going to be. Where are the walls? Where are the bathroom? Where is the kitchen? And so you begin building, not by getting bricks and stones and timber together. You begin with the final product in mind. Then you work really hard, and finally, you have your finished product. But they say begin with the end in mind. That's what a backward design process is in education. So the starting point is to identify your desired outcome, your long-term goals. What I want the student to understand and know and be able to do. Not what I want to teach. That's normally where we begin. Well, I want to teach this. And then we kind of design tests and evaluation standards to see if they learned what we wanted to teach, and then hope that it benefits them over their lifetime. No, we have to work backwards. So again, that is called a backward design program, and it starts with the end results. So the final outcome of comprehensive values education is, I wish I could have a live audience and I would give you time to write down your response. We've defined it, but were you able to understand it? The final outcome from a backward design approach of comprehensive values education is to be good parents. That's what we want our children to do. The other thing, it's not schooling. Yes, it is educational and transfer of knowledge, and through that getting a good job and having a skill set. Those are true. But the final ultimate outcome is we want our children to be good parents. Why? Well, this act says it very clearly. One day, we want our young people to help develop in their children good character and moral values. It will be, after all, their primary right and duty when they become parents. So we want our children not just to be successful economically, not just to have a good job and a high profile and a good reputation and make a lot of money. We know very clearly that those things don't always lead to happiness. But what we want our children to be able to do is to be good parents and to have good families. And that is actually the strongest indicator for financial stability in a student's life. So we talk about developing good character, and the final outcome is we want them to be good parents. Well, there's a step that is needed before that. To be good parents, you first have to be good husband and wife. You have to love your husband and wife, and out of that love, you want to conceive and raise children. Oh, but there's a step before you are a good spouse. You have to be a good sibling, a good brother and sister. And there's a step before that. You have to be good children. So these are called the 4 realms of heart. They're learned in the family. And the foundation of all character education must start in childhood. What does it mean to be a good child? We've explained it. It means to be a child of filial piety that loves and honors their parents. And the school needs to teach that and reinforce that. The family also needs to teach that, and they need to work together. So this means we've now defined, in terms of education objectives, age-appropriate levels, because we've gone through the whole spectrum from childhood to adulthood. So the first, in primary and kindergarten, children need to learn to be filial, sons and daughters, and good brothers and sisters. And that should be learned in the primary and kindergarten ages. When they grow older, then we have other educational objectives building on this. They need to learn to be, ultimately, what it means to be a good spouse, and even in the university level, to be a good parent in later life. So we have a clear framework based on starting with educating the children, brother and sister, conjugal relationships, and spousal. And they actually have the same thing, the nature of love, or the willingness to sacrifice. UNESCO explains this in a different way, but the same idea. They define youth as the period of transition from the dependence of childhood to interdependence as members of a community. This is their definition. Well, what does it mean? The path to maturity. It means we change our priorities. When we are young, we are dependent. Why? We can't hardly think of anything but ourselves, and we can hardly even control ourselves. When I'm hungry, I just cry. I don't think of mommy if she's tired, what time of day it is. And I have to go to the bathroom. I don't care who cleans it up. So that's where we start. We're dependent, but that's not our final destination. We are supposed to become interdependent. In other words, people that other people can respond to or be responsible for. In other words, when we're young, we can only really think of ourselves. It's not wrong or bad, or it's just immaturity, and that's where we start. Our interdependence means we learn to think and care for other people even more than for ourselves. And this is the mark of an adult. Parents don't think of their well-being, they think of the well-being of their children. And they are willing to sacrifice for the well-being of their children. So I often ask, if I had an audience of parents, do any of you have a cash register by your refrigerator in your kitchen? Do you charge your children every time they take something out of the refrigerator? No, you want your children, just take freely. We want you to be healthy and happy, and we'll buy the food that you like, and we'll make it so it's healthy as well. So this is the path to maturity. Who is in the middle? trying to decide, should I live for myself or should I live for others? This is the teenage years, the adolescent years, and they need our help. And we have to help educate them, not just with our words and with the education they receive in school, but with our actions as well, our own character. And especially parents need to have this in mind in raising the children. Children will look more at your character, more at your actions than your words. This is the transition that UNESCO is talking about. Put it another way, when I'm young, I think of myself and I can hardly think of others, and we call that immaturity. But when we transition or change the priority, no longer immaturity, we call it maturity. The mature person, the good parent, can think of others and cares for others, and this is the environment that children are nurtured in. Father Moon, the founder of the Universal Peace Federation, his wife, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, is the founder of Youth and Students for Peace. In Father Moon's autobiography, before he passed away in 2012, he wrote this: to realize that we exist for the sake of others is a great achievement that changes our life. This transition from being immature to being mature, from being able to think only of myself to being able to think of others, this transition is a great achievement. It will change my life. This becomes the defining point of each one of the loves that we've talked about, living for the sake of others. Children do that in their relationship to the parents. Brother and sister do that in relationship to each other. Husband and wife do that in the spousal relationship. And parents do that in relationship to the children. It's the essence of goodness and the essence of love. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to our exciting time together on the June 15th, when we can come together and discuss these more fully. I look forward to listening to you and getting from you. We have had 3 programs already with adult audiences, with members of parliament, with leaders of academia, with educators, both in the primary, secondary, and even in college levels. Now we look forward to having interaction with the students. We look forward to your input, to your cooperation, so we can help our government help raise up our young people here in the Philippines. God bless. Thank you very much.